For more, I'm joined here in the studio by DW political correspondent Simon Young. Simon, always good to have you here. So how likely do you think a three-way coalition is?
Not very likely. I mean, speaking theoretically, the most likely one is the so-called Jamaica coalition of Conservatives, Free Democrats and Greens. It's called that because the party colours look a bit like the Jamaican flag, and it's possibly an attractive option because from a stability point of view, you know, these three together, according to the polls, will be likely to have well over half the votes in next Sunday's election. So, you know, that could work. The problem is that, in particular, the two smaller parties, they really don't see eye to eye, as you heard there. You know, particularly the Green Party co-leaders have been saying for days that they can't see this happening. And I think it would be very difficult, in particular, for the grassroots of the Green Party to, you know, feel comfortable in coalition with the free market economic liberals of the FDP. So it's hard to see it happening, and it would be a very tough coalition negotiation if it came to that.
So do you see a chance that Angela Merkel's Conservatives could, you know, take enough of the vote to govern on their own?
Not if the polls are to be believed. The latest polls suggest that Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats and the Bavarian Conservatives together have 36% of the vote or thereabout. That's not enough to govern on their own. They're going to need at least one party to join with them in coalition. Of course, it's always interesting to look also at how this might play out if there was more of a presidential-style system here in Germany. If Angela Merkel could just run for election on her own, 56% of Germans say they'd like to see her stay as Chancellor. But, of course, it doesn't work like this. It's a parliamentary election and much more complex.
Well, some polls also seem to suggest that Social Democrats candidate Martin Schulz is heading for a historic defeat. How much do you think turnout will play in this?
Well, I think it will play a role. He's picked up a little bit in the last few days, but his Social Democrats still down in the low 20s. It's a very worrying position for them to be in. Mr. Schulz says he can still turn things around. He's looking to the undecided voters, but I think realistically many undecideds and first-time voters may, you know, they could vote for all the parties, not just for the SPD, and some of them, of course, may not vote at all.
Let's turn now to the right-wing party, AFD. If it does emerge as third strongest party, will it just be bragging rights or will it have an impact?
I think it will have an impact. You know, this is significant. It's the first time for many decades that there's been an avowedly, stridently nationalistic party in the Parliament, if they get in as we expect. And I think they are likely to change the atmosphere. You know, in some of the regional parties, parliaments where they've been represented, they've done sort of procedural tricks and walkouts and that sort of thing. On the other hand, they may be on their best behaviour in an attempt to sort of show that they can be re-elected at the next election. But whichever way it goes, I think the AFD would definitely change the tone in Parliament.
And finally, just one last question. Do you think that the AFD does actually stand this chance to be the third strongest party? Well,
the polls suggest so. Could be up to anywhere up to about 15% or even more than that. We won't know until next Sunday evening, Edith.
Well, we wait to see what that poll will end up looking like. Simon Young, thanks for coming in.